or what I'm doing is legal. This is why I believe I'll receive justice in the higher court.
Used to hit more to right and right center than the left. It is good! He did it! He did it!
It doesn't matter what your background is and where you come from. If you have dreams and you have goals, and that's all that really matters.
But there's only one Usain Bolt.
I owe, a lot to Charlie.
A freedom of expression that the entire world could see.
When you black, it's not a movement. It's a lifestyle. This is who we are.
For more than 125 years, the modern Olympic Games have represented the universal celebration of sport. They have produced moments of the highest drama, of supreme excellence, even perfection. There has been tragedy. More recently, triumphant resilience. But for all the magnificent demonstration of sport at its finest, at its most important, one event stands alone as a salute to sport's capacity to change the world.
Winning in near record time, just 0.3 of a second off his world mark.
Two black-gloved fists raised in silent condemnation of racial injustice. Back then, Mexico City, 1968, this medal ceremony protest enraged the white-dominated power base of Olympism. But today, every athlete of color acknowledges the inspiration they have drawn from the courage these men displayed in knowingly sacrificing their careers at the height of their powers. When the modern movements around the world take a knee, they owe much to Tommy Smith and John Carlos.
The powerful silent protest in the 1968 Games was controversial, but it woke folks up and created greater opportunity for those that followed.
That debt to Smith and Carlos is felt not just through Olympic sport, nor is it confined to American athletes. A Formula One icon and a football superstar, just two cases in point.
I've been so inspired by you and what you did all that time ago, and I never in my life thought there would be a moment like yours that would perhaps come up for me.
I'm a bit older than Lewis, and I was born in '77. My dad told me the story, told me how it was. He gave me the date, 16th of October, '68. That date's always gonna be in my mind. I heard that story so many times. I saw the pictures so many times.
It's a story that never grows old, and it's well worth another retell. Mexico City is 7,350 feet above sea level. The thin air at such high altitude made endurance events difficult, but the short power sprints were always going to produce dramatic results when the IOC sent the games of the 19th Olympiad there in 1968. The men's and women's 100, 200, and 4x100-meter relays produced 6 out of 6 world records. Jim Hines' 100 meters time would hold for 15 years. And in the 200, Tommy Smith's time would stand for 11 years. Smith had already owned the previous world record for more than 2 years, running 20 seconds flat in 1966. He won the NCAA and the AAU championships, the Summer Universiade gold medal, and looked untouchable.
Staggered start of the 220-yard dash. In the field, world record holder Tommy Smith of San Jose State, seasoned dash man Willie Turner, and many-time sprint champ Charlie Green. Smith begins to pour it on and forges to the front. He literally flies toward the tape, winning in near-record time, just 0.3 seconds off his world mark. Turner is second, while Charlie Green takes a tumble.
Smith was a red-hot favorite to win the 200 meters in Mexico, until this. John Carlos stunned everyone by becoming the first man to break the 20-second barrier, defeating Smith at the U.S. Olympic selection trials, held at high altitude in California a month before the Games. Because the brush spikes on his shoes were not ratified, Carlos's time was not recognized as a world record. But both men qualified for the Olympics and looked near certainties to stand together on the Mexico podium. Tommy Smith was from Texas, John Carlos from New York. But fate would decree they would both earn track and field scholarships at San Jose State University in California, where both came under the influence of sociology instructor Harry Edwards. As a student, Edwards had been a discus thrower of note on the San Jose track and field team, but was already emerging as the significant figure he would become in civil rights activism. 1968 was a tumultuous year in the U.S. In April, Martin Luther King was assassinated. In June, Robert Kennedy. The Vietnam War had divided the country, in particular, after the Columbia University protests where students took over the administration building. Against this background, Edwards formed the Olympic Project for Human Rights, advocating a boycott of the 1968 Games by African-American athletes unless 4 terms were met. South Africa and Rhodesia to be banned from the Olympics. Muhammad Ali to be restored as boxing's world heavyweight champion. IOC President Avery Brundage to resign. And more African-American assistant coaches to be appointed. The boycott did not win enough support, but Smith and Carlos were two who still wanted to find another way for their voice to be heard about racial inequality. And they pretty much knew they would get their chance. In Mexico, they began discussing what they would do if they both reached the 200 meters podium, which of course they did. Carlos was fastest in the semis and went out hard in the final, the clear leader into the straight. But Smith dashed past him to win in a new world record, 19.83. Carlos lost his stride and was passed by Australian Peter Norman for silver.
Preparation from this point on.
Norman's place on the podium was a shock, but he would play a significant role in what was to come. When the Americans told him of their plans to protest, he immediately asked to borrow an Olympic Project for Human Rights badge so he could support their stand. And when Carlos realized he had forgotten his black gloves, it was Norman who suggested they share. When the U.S. national anthem began, Smith raised his black glove right fist, Carlos his black glove left fist. And in that electrifying moment, in that tense and difficult era, that was all most people saw, the Black Power salute. Smith and Carlos have always insisted it was a human rights salute, and that there was more to it than clenched fists. The socks, no shoes, represented black poverty. The bowed heads were for hope and prayer for a better time. A scarf worn by Smith and a bead necklace worn by Carlos were in remembrance of all those lynched throughout the American South. It was a dramatic moment in the history of sport, but the International Olympic Committee and the conservative media of white America were outraged. Smith and Carlos were expelled from the Games, abandoned by the U.S. Olympic Committee after IOC President Avery Brundage threatened to ban the entire U.S. team if they were not punished. They returned home heroes to many, but their international careers were over. They received abuse, even death threats. And their fame was a burden, not an asset. Smith turned to the NFL and was signed as a wide receiver for the Cincinnati Bengals, but played just 2 games. Carlos continued running for San Jose State in 1969, leading them to a first NCAA championship and equaling the Imperial world record for 100 yards. But he, too, turned to football, playing in Canada. Both men suffered financially, but in time, their courageous stance came to be recognized for its iconic significance. In 2005, a statue of the medal ceremony salute was unveiled, and with silver medalist Norman's approval, his place on the podium was left vacant, so visitors could take their own stand for human rights. Norman also suffered back home because of his role in the protest, but remained in constant contact with Smith and Carlos for the rest of his life. When he died in 2006, the 2 Americans flew to Australia and were pallbearers at his funeral. In more than 125 years of Olympic history, there have been 18,876 medal ceremonies. This was the most important, hands down. The role sports stars can play in changing national and international political and social perspectives has never been better demonstrated than the day Tommy Smith and John Carlos sacrificed their glittering athletic careers in the name of human rights. The whole world knows the Tiger Woods story of how a multiracial kid in his first season as a golf pro entered the gates of Augusta National in the deep south of Georgia and changed the perception of how the game was played. Busted every stereotype of those who played it. But Tiger's tale didn't start with his 12-stroke win for the ages in the 1997 U.S. Masters. Because Tiger couldn't have done it without Lee. And before Lee, there was Charlie. Charlie Sifford and Lee Elder were the pioneers who paved the way for Tiger's drive up Magnolia Lane to the Augusta National clubhouse.
when I turned pro when I was 20 and live my dream because of those guys.
From its origins, golf was a game for the upper class, especially royalty. And as the game spread around the world, it seemed the biggest and best private golf clubs turned discrimination into an art form. Not just class, but religion, gender, and color. The only way people of color had of making their way in the sport was to carry someone else's clubs. Often, the discrimination was unspoken. But when the US PGA Tour was formed in 1929, they didn't even try to hide it. Instead, including a Caucasian-only clause into their rules of play. Disgracefully, it took 32 years to 1961 before the tour scrapped this ban on non-whites competing. It was against the backdrop of this evil racism that the cigar-chomping Charlie Sifford emerged from North Carolina to carve one of the game's most important pro careers. Sifford was born in Charlotte in 1922 and began work as a caddy at the age of 13. Black golfers, banned from competing at the highest level, formed the United Golf Association. And in the 1950s, Sifford was its star. He won the National Negro Open 6 times, including 5 in a row, and also won the Rhode Island Open in 1956 and the Long Beach Open in 1957. Although not PGA Tour events, they contained many prominent white players. World heavyweight boxing champion Joe Louis became a keen golfer and campaigned for Sifford's entry to PGA tournaments. And baseball legend Jackie Robinson, who broke his sports color barrier, encouraged him to ignore the gallery abuse and death threats that would inevitably come his way. In 1961, the PGA Tour finally relented. Sifford was 39 and passed his best, but still played on tour for more than a decade and won 2 tournaments, the Greater Hartford Open and the Los Angeles Open, before moving to the Seniors Tour, where he won the PGA Seniors Championship. He was the first black golfer to be inducted into the World Golf Hall of Fame. And shortly before his death at the age of 92, became only the 3rd golfer, behind Jack Nicklaus and Arnold Palmer, to be awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom. During Tiger Woods' rise to prominence, Sifford spoke regularly with him. Tiger frequently referred to Sifford as the grandpa he never had and named his son Charlie in his honor.
If it wasn't for Charlie and others who paved the way, I don't think my dad would have ever played the game of golf. And hence, I probably wouldn't be here doing this press conference and be involved in the game like I am. So I owe a lot to Charlie.
Sifford never played in the U.S. Masters. His 2 PGA tournament victories coming before all tour winners received automatic entry to Augusta. But he did inspire the first man to break the Masters color barrier.
Michael Jordan was the undisputed GOAT of basketball, until LeBron James came along to make a debate of it. Drafted #1 by his hometown Cleveland Cavaliers, LeBron took the Cavs to the 2007 finals, but lacking a supporting cast, jumped to the Miami Heat in 2010. He would win 2 titles in 4 years before returning to the Cavs for a 3rd in 2016, breaking Cleveland's long drought in America's major sports. King James's crowning achievement. With second-to-none preparation, LeBron was amazing, even approaching 20 years in the league. And not even Jordan could say that.
In 1975, Jack Nicklaus won the 5th of his 6 U.S. Masters titles at Augusta. He was clearly the biggest draw card in the game. But that year, not even Nicklaus could match the media attention given to a golfer who shot rounds of 74 and 78 to miss the cut. Because that was the year the gentlemen of Augusta National finally agreed to invite a black golfer to play. In 1974, Lee Elder won the Monsanto Open just weeks after Augusta bowed to pressure and agreed that all winners of the PGA Tour that year would earn a start in the 75 Masters. His practice round was his first ever look at the course, followed by his biggest ever press conference.
This is something that I've been wanting for a long time, and I'd like to try to do my best. The pressure that I feel right now at Augusta is no more than the pressure of the tournament itself.
Just as Charlie Sifford, a decade or so before, had been subjected to death threats and obscenities on the golf course, Elder had to overcome hardship and inequality to succeed. Orphaned at 9, he did not play golf until 16. Like Sifford, he caddied, he hustled, and got help from people like Joe Louis, and finally qualified for the PGA Tour at the age of 33 in 1968. He won 4 tournaments plus 8 more on the Seniors Tour. Neither Sifford or Elder ever seriously contended in golf's majors. Elder made the cut in 21 of his 34 attempts for a best finish of tied 11th. Sifford made the cut in 11 of his 18 majors for a best of tied 21st. But both became mentors for younger black golfers, like that guy Tiger Woods back in 1997.
When Lee Elder came down when I was chipping, boy, that meant a lot to me because he was the first. He was the one that I looked up to, and because of what he did, I was able to play here. And Charlie, I was able to play on the PGA Tour.
In 2021, with Elder's health failing, Augusta National formally recognized his contribution to the game by setting up 2 scholarships in his name at Payne College, a historically black local institution. They invited Elder to join Jack Nicklaus and Gary Player to be an honorary starter at the tournament. He declared it the thrill of his life. Elder died just 7 months later at 87. Like Charlie Sifford, able to look back on all the hardship, the abuse, the injustice, and know they were able to make something good come of it all.